we hear that we're short of water. Now, I'm joined by Angela Ryan, Uisce Eireann's Asset Strategy Manager. Angela, good morning.
Good morning, Pat, and thanks for having me on
Now,
the
we
show.
had a couple of narrow escapes in the Greater Dublin Area. What's going on?
Right, well, Pat, the demand for water across the region, the Greater Dublin Area, which includes County Dublin, parts of Kildare, Wicklow and Meath, the demand for water has been very, very high since last November. And over the last 2 weeks, the demand for water has been unprecedented. So we're using...
What's happening? I mean, what are people cleaner? Are they showering more often? Are they going to the gym because it's New Year and using loads of water? I don't know. What's the reason?
Well, the economy right now is at full tilt, so there's full employment across the region. Industrial output is very, very high, and coupled with that, we did have a period of very cold weather just over the last couple of weeks. So we had high demand since last November, but the cold weather snap increased leakage slightly, and that's what we're seeing has exacerbated the problems with demand.
Yeah, and there are people who still will run the tap when it gets cold, so they don't want their pipes to freeze, which is crazy.
Absolutely. And I think it's sometimes very unhelpful. Even in some of the newspapers, there was advices for people to run their taps to prevent water pipes freezing. We would say, please don't do that. It puts a particular stress on our system. In times like this, we must conserve water. We're really at the limits of the amount of water we can produce. And
how close were we to actually having to shut off the water? Because I know in my area one day last week, the water was shut off overnight from maybe 11 o'clock until 6 in the morning. There was nothing but a tiny trickle of water available. And then when we searched it out to see was there, some work going on, I think on the local forum, it indicated that this was a water conservation measure.
So that would have been a planned outage on the network. Over the past week, the demand for water has been about 628 million litres of water per day. We can sustainably produce about 615 million litres of water within the region.
So it's very tight.
So we were actually using more water than we could produce in our water treatment plants. This means that our critical storage reduces across the region. And just to prevent large scale outages, we had to put in place some minor water outages across the region. But really, those water outages would have been a lot greater only for the work of the operators within our water treatment plants who've been working around the clock to maximise output, and also the crews on the network who have been working tirelessly to move water around.
Okay, now, who was that politician who said, it doesn't just come out of the sky? Well, it does actually, the water. The idea is that you catch the water in the mountains and so on, it flows into the feeder reservoirs and then it gets treated. Now, in the feeder reservoirs, is there plenty of water? And is it just at the treatment plants that the constriction is?
Well, one of the key issues within the Greater Dublin Area is we have a very, very high dependency on a single water body. So 85% of the supply comes from the River Liffey. It's a relatively small river, so the catchment or the area where you collect that rainwater for the river really is very, very small. It covers about 0.5% of the land mass of the
country. And where is that water extracted?
So that water is abstracted in two places. So up at Poulafuca Reservoir in the Wicklow Mountains, and also at Leakage Reservoir just in Kildare. In general, those two reservoirs, we have about 100 days effective storage of raw water.
So if those reservoirs are at the appropriate level, there's 100 days contained in the two of those. But then if you've got a drought time,
if we have a dry period, for instance, during summer, like in 2018, where there's a prolonged dry period over a number of weeks, those reservoir levels drop quite dramatically, and we can have some key issues there with continuity of supply. So really the region is on a knife edge, not just with our water treatment plants, which operate at near 100% capacity all of the time, but our raw water storage. The river is too small to support the population of 1.7 million that it's
Now, what about
on.
the Blessington Lakes? What feeds the Blessington Reservoir?
So the Blessington Reservoir, there's a catchment up around the Sally Gap in Dublin, It's a catchment size of about 320 square kilometres.
So this is basically mountainous terrain. The rain falls on it, and eventually it makes its way to the Blessington Lakes.
It makes its way to the Blessington Lakes, but it's a very, very small area. So we're relying on rainfall passing across the country, and it's almost like a dart hitting the bullseye on a dartboard. We require it to fall in a very, very specific area to charge up that water supply, and that makes us very, very vulnerable, particularly to drought periods and for climate change going forward.
Now, let's talk about the alternative supply, the River Shannon. Where are we with that plan?
Okay, in terms of the alternative supply, at that project, at this moment, that project is in development. The preliminary business case for the project is with the department and deeper at
Has
present.
the engineering work been done? Do they know exactly what route the pipeline might be taking, or is that still the subject of some argument and discussion?
There is an outline pipe route. Most of the preliminary engineering work has been completed at this stage, and we would like to submit a planning application subject to funding approval for the project at the end of this year.
Now, the business case, how many hundreds of millions are we talking about to get water from the Shannon to Dublin?
Okay, well, within the National Development Plan, the water supply project, or the Shannon project, is within the National Development Plan. It's a project listed at $1 billion plus. The detailed costings are with the Cabinet right now, so there will be further information on the outturn costs when we've gone through that approval process.
You'll have people who live along the Shannon, many of whom saying, please take some of this water because we're flooded all the time. Other people are saying, those dubs are not getting our water. What proportion of the normal flow of the River Shannon, what percentage would be taken out every day if Dublin City was entirely to be watered by the Shannon?
Okay. Well, we never proposed that Dublin City would be entirely watered by the River Shannon.
I know you see that it's a tiny fraction.
It is a tiny fraction. So about 2% of the average flow of the River Shannon. And just to put a bit of context on that, over the past month, the flow through the River Shannon down at Partine Weir has been about 400 cumecs. And if we were abstracting water today, we'd be taking about 1.5 cumecs from that water supply. So it's like taking a tablespoon full of water from a pint glass. You would not notice that volume of water being abstracted.
So the idea would be that the reservoirs in Dublin, if that's what these pipes would feed into from the Shannon, they would constantly be full. I mean, that'd be the whole idea.
Well, it would mean we would have resilience across the network. We would be able to balance across all of our water treatment plants. At present, we're operating them way above normal capacity. We're trying to ensure water quality as we go on, ensure there's no boil water notices. But we have a critical resilience issue. At present, we're cancelling critical works on those supplies. We've deferred water treatment plant upgrades right throughout December and into January. We don't have the ability to fix or repair a lot of our trunk mains just because the water supply is at such a critical point.
Now, the question of leaks, I suppose, and you spend an awful lot of your time in Uisce Eireann repairing leaks, and you try to encourage householders, for the first fix program and so on. How much of a problem is it that this Victorian infrastructure, which is slowly being replaced, is still a primary concern, that if you could eliminate all leaks, we wouldn't have a problem?
If we eliminated all leakage tomorrow in the Greater Dublin Area, we would still have a problem. And again, that is down to our over-reliance on a relatively small river for a very, very large abstraction for a very, very large population. Uisce Eireann have continuously and increasingly invested in leakage reduction. So within the Greater Dublin Area, we've reduced leakage from 38% down to 32%. We have plans in place to reduce that down as far as 20%. And when we get to 20%, we will go further than that. But just another point to say about the Shannon scheme, it isn't just a scheme to supply water to the Greater Dublin Area. There are 36 other supplies that will be served by the proposed
And they'd be high
Shannon
quality
scheme.
supplies then?
High quality supplies.
Now, you were talking about the treatment plants are working to capacity at the moment at 100%. What plans have you got to kind of create new treatment plants for future proofing of the supply?
Well, that is the issue, Pat. At present, we've reconstructed, totally reconstructed the oldest water treatment plant on the system, Vartry Water Treatment Plant. We've completed
Is the new Vartry tunnel open?
the new Vartry. It is a rising main and it is open and it is in full operation at present. We've upgraded the other two major water treatment plants at Ballymore Eustace and Leakage and Leakslip. Apologies. We're doing some work on the Ballyboden water supply, but even as we build the capacities in these supplies, we're not going to be able to have the resilience of a modern European economy until we put a new major supply in place.
Now, one of the problems that we have, I suppose, at the water treatment end of things is that we are compelled to mix stormwater with foul effluent, and it goes into the treatment plants. So that kind of you can be overwhelmed in your treatment plants. But I remember seeing a program, I think about Thames Water or something like that, and a politician was cutting the tape at the new facility and famously drank a glass of totally recirculated water that had been sewage going in and drinking water coming out. Now, I'm not sure how sanguine that politician was about that process, but is there any plan for that kind of recirculation of water to totally clean it with, primary, secondary, tertiary, and so on, to the point of pristine?
We have had a look at all options for the Greater Dublin Area, including interim options such as treated water recycling, and we covered some of them in our National Water Resources Plan that Uisce Eireann produced in 2021. We also have a regional plan that discusses these options. Again, these short-term options may assist us with our supplies, but until we have a new source, we will be vulnerable in the long term.
A lot of points being made, some of them political. No one appreciates the water until the well runs dry. People do not value water enough, especially those who don't have to pay for it. As someone who has their own well, I'm so careful with water, especially in the summer months. More people need to have vessels in situ to collect rainwater and use it for toilets and gardens, etc., when there are drought issues with supply. Water is our most valuable and important asset. We need to treat it as such. That idea of water butts and so on, to use for flushing toilets or whatever, that really hasn't caught on here, even with new planning permissions.
Well, at present, we launched a water conservation campaign due to the high demand across the region last week. And we would like to thank people for their efforts in that space. So demand has come down slightly. And I think they're all the things we can do on a day-to-day basis ourselves. Be a little bit mindful about our water use.
Simple things like don't run the tap continually while you're brushing your teeth.
Don't run the tap continuously. Take a slightly shorter shower. That will take the pressure off our supplies. In terms of wider conservation measures, as you were saying, Pat, the first fix free scheme, obviously we've had a cold snap over the past few days. We'd ask people to be vigilant about their supplies. Have a look in the garden. Is there a garden tap that's leaking? Is the toilet leaking in the house? They're all areas where we can lose massive amounts of water. So even without water butts, there are short-term things that we can do to promote water conservation.
Also, we're building a lot more houses and apartments. This one, we live near Rush, North County Dublin. Since many new houses were built in Rush, the water pressure is extremely low. Often we have to flush toilets more often as a result. We can no longer run dishwasher and washing machine at the same time. That's from Annette in Skerries.
And again, that would be due to some of the critical supply-demand balance issues we have across the region. When demand increases, the pressures across the system can reduce there. We're building additional storage across our networks to try to address that. So Uisce Eireann has built Stillorgan Reservoir, Sagart Reservoir over the past 3 to 5 years, which are helping with some of those problems. But obviously it is a high growth scenario within the region.
So just people think about water conservation every time you turn on the tap. Just do it
Absolutely.
when you need to, and that's it.
And think of your neighbours as well. So if we waste water, it means there's less water available for our neighbours and colleagues.
Angela Ryan, Uisce Eireann's Asset Strategy Manager, thank you very much for joining us in the studio.